Oh, welcome back to McCarthy Performance. Today we're doing a quick little job for a customer. He's got a Ford flathead tractor engine that I did quite a bit of work on it about 5 years ago. Stitch pinned it, re-sleeved it, um, put new seats in the block, cut the block, did a bunch of work. Anyways, what keeps on coming up is he doesn't run it very long, and it gets enough condensation on the exhaust side that it rusts the valves up and it basically seizes the valves. Now the valves are in excellent shape; they're brand new, but the problem is these iron guides, and I don't know what the quality of these are. These are replacements, so God only knows, but they just rot. This is the second time that he's gone through this, so what I ended up doing is I ended up putting a bronze guide in it, putting this in the lathe, spinning it using my seat and guide equipment, Tobin Arp. This would be my drill for drilling, and it's got a lead on it, so it's going to guide through the hole, and then ream it and push a bronze guide in it, and then finish it off and machine it. So really hoping that this is going to cure the problem. Um, Hard to say, but we're finishing them off with diamonds. I'm not going to give it a super fine finish on the guides. I'm hoping that it'll hang on to some oil. But anyways, I got the sun and gauge all set up, and we're honing them out with the sun and hone that I have. That's what we got going on today. I've got the gauge zeroed out, so I'm basically just running through, and when it hits zero, it's basically about 3 thousandths on that. So we're hoping this is going to cure his problem, and they sure are slick. The old, the replacement guides, the quality on that stuff probably isn't the best, but hopefully this ends this problem with this whole thing. So I'll hone one of them out because I'm actually down to one. I would have showed you on the lathe, but it's pretty simple stuff. It's not really that big of a deal. My chuck does not have very much run out, but how much run out is this going to have when we're all said and done? Boy, I'm spinning it on the valve. Probably going to put a dial indicator on it, but these things, I know when he got them new, they had some run out on them, and these you just kind of beat down the hole in a old flathead, so I think they'll be all right. I'm probably going to have them put some bluing on the valves and just see where the seats are. If I have to, I'll just touch up the 45 for them. So like I said, I've converted this to diamonds, so it takes out quite a bit. Doesn't take much. Okay, we'll check where we're at on this. I just washed it, got it clean. A lot of mud on this thing from the oil and it out, so let's see where we're at. Looks like we got a little more to take out, not much. So this would be the last guide. Pretty close. We're at 0 with the rest of them. That's where all of them are, and it's pretty darn close to 3,000s. These are kind of hard to get the bypass valve out. So normally I like to take the bypass valve out, but on these I don't. But what I do is I slide a little Allen wrench in there after I wash it and clean it, and I move it back and forth, and I oil it, and I work it back and forth so I know that it's free. It's all been blown out. I'm going to put the rotor in it. I like to take them apart and put them together on the engine. So we're going to put a little bit of assembly lube on the pump body. I always mark them. A little lacquer thinner, remove the paint. Just a little bit of red Loctite, not much. A little bit goes a long ways. It's probably a little too much. There is a torque spec on these, but normally with the red Loctite I just put them on snug. That one's good. That's good. There's a little bit of stick up here from the timing cover. Now this pan gasket I'm sure will conform to that, but I'm going to just trim it lightly. I'm going to use a wood chisel. So So now it's a little bit flatter. I don't want to have any reason for the pan gasket not sealing up 100%. Although it's a one-piece gasket, and they are fairly forgiving, but it's not a big deal just to do that, so we just took care of it. Okay, so normally with these one-piece gaskets, I usually put a very thin bead along the pan rail. With an aftermarket pan, it's always a gamble whether it's going to seal 100% because they're usually not the original OEM stampings on the pan, so I usually put a little bit of a bead on them. This does have the original pan, so I'll probably put just a little bit in the corners, and I don't tighten it all the way up. And we'll let it set up. I tighten it up a little bit, snug the pan down, and then I finally tighten it when everything's dry. And it usually works. So I'll put a little bit in the corners. I'll let it sit this way for a couple hours, make sure that any of the silicone that I put on it is good and dry before we roll the engine over, and any oil runs back, and we don't want it to get between the pan and the gasket, obviously with fresh RTV on it. So we'll leave it upside down. This is probably as far as I'm going to go with it today, because I want the RTV good and dry. We'll start cleaning it a little bit, get the oil off of it, and start painting it. Put the new intake on it for them, and that'll probably be it for this video. Thanks for watching. Okay, on this 360, it's a non-adjustable valve train, which means there's a certain amount of preload on the push rod. And so you really can't do much adjusting other than change the push rod length or convert it over to adjustable valve train. And seeing how this is an OEM engine, we're not going to do that. But what we are going to do is we're going to check the corners, the 4 corners, and we're going to check how much preload I have with an adjustable push rod. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the push rod in here, and I'm going to adjust it till 0. I'm going to make sure that I'm up on the back side of the cam, which would be the heel. This is the exhaust right now. So the exhaust is halfway up its lift. We're going to do the intake side, and that should be at the base circle of the cam. And we're going to put the adjustable push rod in it and adjust it, write it down, probably mark the head, do this corner, this corner, and this corner, and hopefully we're going to be within probably 4 or 5 thousandths. You know, that might be wishful thinking, but hopefully we're somewhere around there, and that will be fine. And then we're going to measure the amount of preload, how much shorter the overall push rod is compared to the new one. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, we're doing the exhaust, and up all the way on full lift on the intake. And what I do is I zero lash it, so there's no play in the rocker, and I'm rotating the crankshaft a few degrees one way and a few degrees the other way to make sure that I am truly on the base circle of the cam. We are. So I'm going to take it off. I'm going to measure this one. I'm going to write it on the head. I'm going to do the intake, do the other side, and I'll figure out how much preload's on the lifter and decide if that's acceptable for me or not. As this is a stock build, I don't have any fear of over pumping the rocker arm, or I'm sorry, over pumping the lifter and having a problem with anything, because it's just OEM replacement cam shaft, some Mellings. I checked the events and everything looks pretty good on the cam. Surprisingly, it's pretty darn accurate. I wish they all could be as close as this one. Okay, we did this one a little differently. The rocker arms are in real good shape, but everything's stack on tolerances. So I decided to measure every single one and adjust it accordingly. And because this is a pedestal, I made up a shim and put it under the pedestal. And then for like fine tuning, which with a hydraulic I wouldn't have had to get them, but they're within less than 5 thousandths. I have some real thin bronze shims, and I made up some shims to put under the pedestal if I need to move one up or down. It should not hammer out. I don't have any fear of it. It's not a high performance engine, so that's what I did. Um, there's not a lot of options here. Now these heads I bought, they are a replacement head for an OEM. I don't know what the springs set up good, the height and everything. I didn't really get after the valve job. The valves are new. There's nothing sunk. The only thing I can come up with is these pedestals aren't quite as good as they could be. It's not a real big deal. We're in the center of the valving of the lifter, which it should be fine. Um, but for micro adjustments, I'm just putting a shim under whichever one is off a little bit. Uh, like I said, so far this side is within less than 5 thousandths. This side is coming in quite well. For some reason, the end valves, um, the pedestal height was a little bit different, but everything in the middle looks good. Um, I don't even want to think about what's going on. I know the spring pockets in the plunge depth and the height was good. I put a straight edge across the valves when I did it. They're all straight and there's nothing going on weird there. The only thing I can think of is there's some stack on tolerances between the rocker arms, and these are stamped, and the pedestals. And I'm like I said, I'm just adjusting everyone, and I'm adjusting it, and I'm shooting for a target size, and then I'm moving it and adjusting it to that. So that's what we got going on. That's what I'm doing here. Nothing too exciting, um, but it's just another job that. I don't want to reinvent the wheel here. I don't want to make the job any difficult than it needs to be, but I also don't want to have any problems with this. So, well, we got everything pretty much all set. Backtrack a little bit here. When I assemble these, I like to use the CMD high pressure lubricant. Works really well to make sure there's no dry starts, and with push rods and valve stems, fulcrums, and stuff. I like to put a little bit of that on there. So this is pretty much all set. We're going to put the intake on it. Of course, going to make sure that that all fits correctly. And valve covers, and that's going to be about it. Um, this is a little handy tool that I picked up a while back, and boy, when you get into a jam, you need to make gaskets. This comes in handy. This is what I use to make my micro shims and my shims. This works really good for softer materials. Obviously, you're not going to stamp stainless through here or steel, but for lighter gauge materials, it works quite well. Brass and aluminum. I wouldn't recommend going past 25 thousandths with that, but it is a steel base. It has carbide punches, and you know it. Boy, this thing is just—it's the sweetest thing that I've bought in a long time, and it'll make radiuses. So if you're doing like I've had to make gaskets for modified ported heads, and you know, you can pick up the radius and punch the corners out. It saves you time if you've ever cut out intake gaskets by hand. This tool is really nice to have. Well, I guess we're pretty much going to put a fork in this 360 here. We're going to get back on the 283 fuel injected engine. I've got a couple things that I have to do to that, not a lot, and then she'll be ready to assemble. Thank you for watching my videos.